it's a good frame. What's the best composition?
Okay, cool. Okay. Hi, Nick. Thank you for the interview. Sorry, we started, I didn't tell you. Yeah. We had an interview. No, just this is like a little bit broken up, but nothing. I think everybody forgot it already. By now, everybody forgot it. Yeah.
Yeah.
We did an interview with the entire Antirom, team, but I wanted to talk to you individually. And so the topic of the conversation, of the interview, or whatever we call it, raw interview, is that I'm getting this impression in the last week, I'm getting this realization how marketing and design and basically the entire business was a bit stupid in the last 3, 5, maybe 10 years, how our minds were focused on really solving idiotic problems, like how to get from point A to B with less clicks or nonsense like that. And suddenly with coronavirus, we have this opportunity to actually be a little bit smarter. We are talking about innovation, about, suddenly there is this enormous talk about science and engineering, the way business and marketing and design were like 200 years ago, 100 years ago, when there was like real serious changes to society. So what do you think about that? Is that your impression?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. Let me think how I think about it. I mean, I suppose if I was going to try and summarize the sort of current status, I'd probably say that, we've had all these, lots of there's been lots of peripheral changes. There have been sort of deeper transformations in certain industries that we've experienced over the last few years, but it's been a lot of kind of peripheral things happening. And then suddenly, I suppose, the great acceleration of that Corona has brought about has made all those peripheral things very central. It's finally kind of brought home this idea that it's all kind of one tangled mess, not lots of sort of different sort of layers of independently operating messes, if you know what I mean, which is exciting and kind of terrifying at the same time.
Yeah. So, but do you agree with this idea that before was, it was very hard for science and engineering and proper design and real change to enter into the mainstream? And as you said, only little things were coming inside, and now there is like people are taking that much more seriously, So for example, my impression is that new marketing is innovation. That's it. It's like now marketing is going to focus much more on making great products and then hoping they work out, instead of before maybe not so much on products but more on like website tricks and stuff like that.
Yeah. I think that's the I think the consequence of the thing is, it's hard to describe because it's not really digital becoming sort of central in people's lives. It's just it's the degree to which these sort of dynamic enablers and systems becomes kind of truly pervasive, and that also it's not just about the technology, it's about the sort of recognition and embrace of society culture to the fact that by becoming more pervasive, it sort of changes everything. It like changes the way that everything operates, and when those changes happen, then there is a greater need to engage those changes in a fuller way. So not just these kind of peripheral sort of tweaking the edges, but more like getting really under the skin of the change and basically using. So it's not sort of design. It's just like using a more kind of radical approach to properly sort of conceive of what those things need to be now, with this kind of quite a much sort of bigger palette of kind of tools and options available to us to kind of define things in a new way. So I guess the thing I've been writing about a lot recently and thinking about a lot is just the transition to electric cars, and how if you just look at that as a sort of usual sort of engineering challenge, so just throw the engineers, the kind of like, okay, make the petrol car an EV, and then the marketing people, you pick up the pieces and try and kind of excite the markets about that. It's just not going to work. It's not going to work for businesses. It's not going to work for the incumbents to do that. They have to really think about, well, what is the new car going to be? What is our version of that going to be? What is our story in that transition going to be? And how does the design kind of deal with the kind of the format, the fundamental sort of format changes within the vehicle proposition, but then also the expression of what that brand is in the new world on the basis of its new product propositions, the story that, you know, the narrative that starts to unfold. So it's sort of, you know, it becomes, it's not that it becomes defining, it's just you kind of have to, I think, design and technology and, you know, business, those things have to kind of coalesce, you know, have to come together in a more meaningful kind of union, and that makes it you know, that makes it, you know, really exciting, I suppose.
Yeah, but you gave a good example. You're talking about a serious product, an electric car.
Yeah.
And we are not talking about Coca-Cola, which is like as
Yeah.
to it, like sugary water. Like 5 years ago or 10 years ago, Coca-Cola was king. You know, like you know, so meaning that, or tobacco, Coca-Cola, all these nonsense products, and now we are talking about electric cars, which are like seriously engineered products. You know, they're like actually making a huge change. They're not a superficial thing, you know. So meaning that we have to deal much more with, because I noticed with my clients, the clients who are dealing only with marketing and sales, because I work mostly with SMEs, and you know, the ones that were not dealing with products are disappearing. You know, that were mostly like retail, marketing, sales, you know, relationship and stuff. They didn't have a good product. The ones that had a tradition of pushing new products, making new products, all the stuff, and innovating, they're not having trouble. They don't have problems. But you're a founder of Webby, is that correct? Of Webby Awards?
No, Lovely Awards. So the Lovely Awards is the European sister platform to the Webby Awards. Yeah. Which is,
I'm always very stupid in these interviews. It gives the opportunity to other people to appear as genius.
Yeah. No, it's good. It's the partner to the Webby Awards. I used to be the European Webby ambassador, because we you know, the agency I started we won 10 Webbies over the years. So we got to know the crew over there, and we became friends, and then we just felt like, you know, Europe wasn't fully engaging in the Webbies, and actually we really felt it was a positive platform to celebrate, you know, what we felt was really the most exciting work in digital, because I think a lot of the other awards were just looking at kind of, you know, craft and, you know, things that were very sort of visually impressive, and we were like, actually, you know, the most important things that are happening here are more cultural. They're more, you know, something can look like a piece of shit but can be really transformative and brilliant, and you know, there should be a space to recognize that work. And the Loveys really sprung out of that, and that's what, you know, we just celebrated our 10-year anniversary last week.
Okay. No, but already now you don't see much difference, because it's still 2020, still the residue, like the mentality of before. But do you expect? Is there going to be any changes in Lovey, or how do you see it changing in the next 5 years? I'm trying to catch an example in your experience. A concrete thing that is easy for me to get, you know.
Well, I think that the sort of, you know, the spirit that really attracted us to the sort of Webby family was this sort of feeling that it was more, you know, it was looking deeper into the changes, and had a sort of fuller sense of what excellence was, you know, what was meaningful and what was exciting, what was because you know, whether you're talking about awards or you're talking about media or whatever you're talking about, that draws focus to certain things, and it's basically setting standards in the marketplace, in the culture. So it's really important. Those things are actually quite important to kind of move things forward. And it does feel like since we started, it feels like there's been a move in that direction. So I think, and it's also a consequence, of course, of, you know, when you stop seeing digital as something else, you know, something happening over there, but something that's kind of affecting everything, then actually those qualities become much more important. Because if it's just sort of, if you're just looking at it visually and technically and thinking, oh, that thing's brilliant, whether irrespective of how it really kind of resonates with the world. You know, it's very easy to get some of those things wrong, but because you're not conscious, or you're not caring about the consequence. And I think obviously one of the things about, you know, particularly COVID is seeing how, you know, so much we've been very conscious of the consequences of technology in a very acute way, because of the sort of intensity of the situation, and the fact that it's kind of enabled, you know, it's made so many things. Just imagine, you know, going back, doing this 20 years ago. I mean, it would have been a completely different experience. I mean, it might have been, you know, it would have been challenging, obviously, in its own.
The first 20 years ago, the first person who went to the video store would have the most fun. I mean, he would buy everything, rent everything. If I was 20, if this was happening 20 years ago, I would go to the nearest. We had these clubs where you go and you rent tapes, so you can buy them. Like Blockbusters, but they were all individual. I would just go in there and rent like 1,000 videos.
Yeah, totally.
Like everybody else in the neighborhood would be like, "Wow, what? I would be the kid."
Yeah, and then you don't. It's like, what would you have done, food wise and all this kind of thing. So I think as we track forward, I think the Loveys and the Webbys as a representation of what's important in the digital world is, and this the sort of fuller sense of that. I think it will just become more and more kind of feel more and more normal and mainstream because that's how we're relating to sort of technology these days. It's not this outside thing. It's very much a kind of inherent part of our lives now.
Yeah. Well, so you're saying that there's going to be much more impact of technology and design is going to be much more relevant in logos.
I think it's more the sort of excitement and interest around technology is not so much of it being a kind of novelty, the novelty benefits, but actually seeing it just as an inherent part of everyday life, just like television, sort of relationship we've had with television, which is you go to work and you talk to people about what you were watching on TV last night. But you read about something that happened in a soap opera in the newspaper. It's just like part of the it's part of the discussion, part of the conversation. And I think with technology has been this sort of new thing. It's have this novelty aspect about it. People get excited about things that sound like amazing ideas, but actually don't really do anything or don't really have any impact. And then suddenly, we're in the situation where it's been happening for a long time. Obviously, with it's given a much sharper focus to it, where technology and technological things are everyday life. They're part of the conversation. You'd hear pretty regular folk down the pub complaining about being tracked on Facebook, is Amazon destroying the high street? Those things are just normal conversations now, and technology is a part of those conversations. Everybody kind of gets the relationships that are at play and what the consequences are, which I think just changes the whole. It stops it being because I think the thing you opened up with was just about this. The role that design has played up to this point has felt a bit unsatisfactory. It's felt sort of auxiliary.
Yeah, that's a great word, unsatisfactory. Yeah.
Yeah, but obviously these times now demand that, in the same way that technology has become sort of accepted as just a sort of a commonplace concern. Design is a part of that, because I think when people are talking about technology, a lot of what they're talking about is sort of experience. Is what we would call user experience, which is a kind of subset of our sort of design concern. And and I think it's sort of obvious again to everybody that practice, that discipline is very important. And that user experience is a sort of enabler of transactions as much as it is a way of building brands and building kind of vibe and atmosphere and that kind of that aura around around brands.
Yeah. I never liked that term user experience. I was always afraid of it. I don't know.
Like
users, it means like someone free. I prefer customer or something else.
Yeah, I think just experience in general.
It's a Facebook term, I think. When people started using user experience, I know experience design is from 90s. I remember that book, the guy that invented like experience design. I think I even met him like a long time ago. But then this user experience just showed up from somewhere, and I think it's with Facebook because there are users and you don't pay. It feels free, but then now it's not free.
I'd say it was before that. I think it was just a sort of recognition, because it kind of grew out of it was the sort of the bastard child of IA, information architecture, and kind of design, where obviously design. I mean, because anybody dealing with technology, we've been doing a sort of UX since we started, because you can't avoid it. Like you're making experience.
No, the practice is clear.
Terrible experience.
The practice is clear. It makes sense. I just don't like the term.
No. But I think it came about. I think the reason why it's slightly nauseating is it came out of the service side. It came out of the sort of agency world, and the reason why it was established as a sort of quasi sciencey term is because it was just easier to bill for, and that when you, because I've been I've been in those conversations, really on the front line with those things with clients going, so what's that thing on the bit? Why am I paying that for that? Trying to sort of chip away at the budget, bring the budget down. It's like, what's that thing, that line item there? And if it doesn't sound robust enough, it gets knocked out, but that you sort of have to present that, you have to sort of tackle that feature of the problem, and you can't just bury it under design, because then they'll go, why are there two designers on it? So I think it's basically just come out of that. It's become a sciencey thing because it's been easier to bill for, but it's not descriptive, because it sort of doesn't really capture the what it needs to engage.
Cool. And so I know you for some time. I think we know each other since 90s. Yeah. And I know you've set up Oven. So I remember you from, I think we spoke, and then you had Poke. Those are two agencies in London, but you also set up Hulger, which started with the phone joke, kind of like a funny thing. It was funny, cool, but then you moved that to light bulbs. You try to make sustainable light bulbs that mix sustainability and design. So you've done a lot of stuff, and I was wondering about your feeling now. How do you feel, with coronavirus crisis, and just where is your energy? Do you feel like, okay, for example, I feel like I can't wait for this thing to finish so I can go out and change the world or do something. I feel like I have to do something important. Maybe I'm schizophrenic, I don't know. But I have this feeling like I'm waiting and the energy is bottling up, and I'm like super happy because, for example, Zoom for me is an example. We used Zoom like 1 year before, or I don't know how long before. And suddenly people are saying like Zoom is a new thing. I'm like, I don't know. At least people are using Zoom. I don't have to go on Skype or something, So I'm waiting to enter this world, which is always the world of my dreams. Like no office. I wanted to have no office, like in 90s. I need an intranet, and I used iPhone in 97, or 96, which was like some guy made a application on desktop on Windows where you can video call, and I spoke to a guy in Sicily with a bunch of gold. I remember I was so happy about that iPhone before Apple. So finally I'm entering this world, which is like the world of my dreams, unfortunately with a horrible price, but it's the world of my dreams. So I'm super excited, like we're gonna go there and kick ass, So I mean, am I crazy? Do you feel the same?
Yeah, no, kind of. I mean, halfway. I mean, I sort of feel like, I feel like the opportunity to, make an impact and sort of shape the world for people who, for someone who, to your description, I've obviously dealt with lots of different kinds of problems, from, building brands and engineering, designing physical products and distribution and business and all that kind of thing. And then agency life, like, shaping global brand kind of communications and e-commerce strategies and blah blah, all these kind of things coming together. It should be. I'm excited about the state the world is in now, because there is this kind of collective realization of the importance of all this stuff. There is this, as we've described, a kind of acknowledgement and acceptance of the sort of the embrace of these technologies, so they become kind of normalized. And the world is in a big fat kind of mess for a whole bunch of reasons. Obviously economically, but also there's a bunch of stuff to fix, and we've got the climate crisis kind of hanging over our heads as well. So that it's despite all the horrible suffering that's happened already, and it will happen, because I think that the economic fall that is yet to come, really. I mean, this sort of and all the consequences that has. Despite all that, this is a fantastic moment to get out there and go change some stuff, because I think it's only in these times of kind of chaos and crisis that you are able to make foundational changes. Because when things are running well, then there's no appetite, there's no desire to really change things, other than if you're if you happen to be sitting on an idea and you have the right connections to be able to kind of do your sort of Silicon Valley style, startup challenger, which is more sort of, slightly different conditions. But I think, this crisis kind of faces so many other things. I mean, and very like normal, sort of non-technological kind of precedents that this, the opportunity to sort of come in with fresh ideas and things never been greater. Really, we will never have, we'll never get this opportunity again in a lifetime.
Well, that's a good thing. That's a nice idea. I mean, it's a nice way you said it. I never thought about that. Like but in my lifetime, it's never going to happen again.
Yeah. So you should be excited, but I think we still.
Although I keep having those things every 10 years. Remember, I went through 10 years, like 10 wars or like 90s, then 2008 and 20.
Well, you've had a war to deal with, which is obviously a different.
No, there's like lots of wars.
Yeah.
And
But I think the thing that makes me sort of so I think I see that opportunity. I see that enormous kind of opportunity particularly for anybody who's been harboring or been working with new ideas and being constantly sort of frustrated by trying to really innovate and trying to really change things and never really getting that far, but not because of the lack of the quality of ideas, but just because of the kind of inertia of a world that doesn't want to change, of a sort of regime that is quite happy and doesn't really want to doesn't really want to transform. So but I think there is still a lot of that. I think there's also the transformation itself has become kind of industrialized. I think that makes it difficult to operate in a way that again lets you kind of get to the right territory without getting pulled off your track.
So how do you feel? What do you want to do? Are you just going to go and keep on doing what you were doing, or if you're going to start something new, do something new? What is your position? What are you doing now? Sorry, I didn't.
That's right.
Your history.
So I mean, I basically had the end of a year off. I took a year off at the end of last year. I left Poke. I set up Poke 19 years ago with my co-founders, and but I left last year. We'd sold it to Publicis Group. And that was great. It worked out really well, but it just wasn't for me in the end. And so I was out of that. And then Flumen, which we're still running, but we kind of ramped it down last September. So we just kind of reduced the sort of headcount and basically sort of turned it into more of a D2C business. So I don't have much to do with that on a daily basis. So I just took a year out and moved out of London. And dealt with some, just sort of kids moving schools and all that kind of thing. And then just taking it.
Where did you?
We moved to. It's an old Roman town. It's one of the most important Roman towns in England, and it's called St Albans. It's 20 minutes from centre of London, so I could still, I could go into London. I could go into London every day if I needed to without any too much stress. But it's just clearing my head really and trying to. I've been sort of at it for 25 years without a break really, and then running, just spreading myself too thin, and also kind of having a young family. It was just basically too much for too long. I didn't really burn out. I just more like kind of ran out of inspiration and mojo, and just needed to kind of find that again. But also, I think in recognition that I've rolled up a load of really interesting experience, and I think my kind of talent and instincts are pretty intact, but I just can't. It's going to take a while to figure out exactly how to place myself so I can but use that as best as possible.
This is what I was saying, because I mean, believe me, almost every second day these days I'm talking to someone who worked in advertising agency, like this marketing sales world, who is like, okay, I have left. And I'm waiting for something new where I can use my brain. And, I think there is a small component there that people that like really that whole world of programmatic and big data, like cold calling, bombarding with ads, figuring out how to sell the whatever pots and pans. And Coca-Cola. I use the term Coca-Cola for all that kind of, it's a metaphor for me. And people just had enough of that a little bit, like they want something like it's what those guys from States are always saying. They're always saying like, where is the flying car, and how many like I'm gonna die and we're not gonna have flying car. And now someone in Japan is like trying to test, or where is it? In Japan is trying to test. I see it in the news, trying to test the flying car. Let's give us the fucking flying car already. You know? So everybody got sick of this. You know, I hate that word. Another word I don't like programmatic. You know, it's like like, you know, what can I write to sell more ads, to get more clicks, to get people on my website and stuff. And I think a lot of people are you know, really smart people are getting bored with that. You know, so you think you're one of them? Did you get bored of that? Sorry to ask you. Like,
no. So yes, I mean, yes and no. I think it's part of the kind of industrializing the transformation thing that I mentioned, which is just, you know, I think there's always working creatively in you know, with businesses. There's always a tension because ultimately the business doesn't really want creativity. It's not inviting you in because it likes it. It's doing it it's a means to an end, and creativity, you know, has been seen as a sort of necessary evil in order to you know, engage people's imaginations, you know, and engage markets and get people excited about what you're doing, get people to think about you, get people to sort of have you know, build an emotional connection. You know, whether you're talking about, it's not just advertising, it's whether you're talking about UX and the sort of design of things as well. It's not just you know, the kind of you know, the adverts, but I think things like, you know, programmatic have given the apparent opportunity to sort of completely sidestep creativity. It's guaranteed. So, you know, the promise of sort of targeting has been that you don't, you know, if you can vary and test enough, the user, the consumer will tell you which is right and which is wrong. You don't really need creativity. You don't need the lateral kind of perspectives of creativity to act on things, to throw up things that people might be more excited by. You just literally kind of, you know, just throw up 20 different guesses, and then one of them is going to score well, and that's even more, you know, it's more sciencey, it's more guaranteed, it's more you know, quantifiable, and then everybody's satisfied. And of course, you know, so that's had a massive pull on businesses and communication. And I think we you know, we're surrounded by, so I mean, but still, you know, mainly on platforms. It's not there on television yet, although that'll come. You know, we are surrounded by things that are sort of optimized against our, you know, whatever it is that we're being targeted against. And it not only creates a kind of weird feeling, but it also creates this kind of this kind of vacuum in you know, in the sort of emotional world of you know, brands and things, because so much emphasis has now been put on kind of, you know, the industrialization of communication through optimized, you know, basically ad placements on the back of, you know, laser sharp targeting. So I think anybody that's been working with that in that world has had that sort of rush of seeing the kind of early efficacy of it in the, you know, in the beginning days, and have, you know, probably been banging the drum for like, this is great, you know, we should do more and more of this. In the meantime, obviously the platforms have been cracking up their rates, and also just when everybody does something, it just starts to feel bland and boring, you know, and then everybody, because, you know, the you know, whilst you might be able to kind of laser target consumers, you still have this problem of like, what you're going to say that's interesting to them. And if that's not one creative brief, that's like a million different briefs for a million different targeting signals, then that's creatively, that's not going to get solved. So what you end up with is just very kind of mechanical, and you know, everything ends up feeling kind of the same because everybody's got the same cues, so that, and they're all kind of writing against the same you know, that same structure. So you know, we've kind of, it feels like we got to this point in communication. I mean, I'm speaking very kind of broad brushes, but I think that the people, you know, the people you're talking about have suffered this, which is, you kind of, it all makes sense. We've all got there for good reason. It's kind of exciting, but it's all dumped us in this place where there's sort of, it's a cul-de-sac, you know, there's nowhere to go, because it's like, we've just sort of handed everything over to optimization. Everybody's sort of accepted it. Businesses are very happy with it because, you know, we've circumvented the problematic world of sort of lateral creativity, and we've gone for this more sort of science-driven approach to communication, which everybody loves the idea of. And, you know, we've seen the graphs of engagement, and everybody feels like this is the best thing that's ever happened. And yet, you know, slowly in the background, you know, the brand, you know, value and resonance is depleting. You know, nobody, you know, those departments that used to commission like crazy, you know, interesting work that, you know, I had the privilege of working with, they've all, you know, they've all gone. There's no appetite or investment for that stuff, because it's all a bit like, well, why would you spend money on that when you could just go and do, you know, add another you know, another sort of testing, you know, bigger you know, testing set, so that you can optimize ever so slightly more. So yeah, I think there is that in the air, and but I'd also see that as just part of the set, you know, part of that big opportunity, because I think we're kind of getting to the end of that road, and you know, also cookie-based marketing is coming to the end of a road itself because of regulatory pressure, and again, this kind of public awareness, you know, the fact that a lot of people in this, you meet in the street who have nothing to do with technology are uncomfortable with the idea that they're being tracked, and you know, the regulators are getting involved with that. So that itself will change. So I just see it as another part of this kind of malaise that you know, that is now, because of the acceleration of sort of the role of technology in our lives. There's also an acceleration of kind of awareness and you know, tackling of these kinds of you know, not so pleasant or not so great consequences.
Yeah. So it's kind of like, I like when you're saying industrialized. I didn't think that's a new word for me. Maybe you guys use it all the time and girls, but I never applied it in that sense. You know, that meaning that you make something and then it's cool and it's handmade and it becomes industrialized, and then you have to move on to a next thing. You know. And these things that are industrialized, they become like making cars, you know, like, you know, they're all like, you know, they have original parts, and then you just put a little bit on it, and all the cars look the same, and it's safe. The only difference is that with cars, you have to do that for safety, and they're so difficult to make. And these things are, you know, there is no safety or difficulty in making, you know, it's just to increase efficiency. And I'm not worried about the brand, because I see the brand as a long story, like a long relationship, and ad is a very quick relationship. I'm worried about the product. That's what I was talking in the start, that, you know, I see that product focus was lost. You know, there is a lot of this really, really poorly, you know, I work mostly in Italy, and they're crazy about products. You know, they really not so good. I mean, not that they're not good, but they don't care so much about the marketing, the blah blah, and they love the product, and that's why I always see the Americans and everything, because they could never make the cheese as Italians, they could never make the clothes as Italians, they could never make a Ferrari or cars as Germans. They always try to focus more on marketing. They got really good at this, you know? And I think it's returning back to the good products. Like, you really need to make a good product, because all this stuff is not going to work. You cannot sell Coca-Cola forever, you know. And
totally. I know. I totally agree. I mean, I think that's one of the things that makes it interesting, these moments, because I think you know, the product and marketing have been very separate, and I think you know, what are the most amazing kind of brands and products out there at the moment would be something like Tesla, which is, you know, it is a story. It's a story and a product. You know, it's a product that tells stories. And why does it tell stories? Is because it's been designed in a really creative, radical way that doesn't feel like it's not just like a different car to a BMW. It's a completely different. It's a different story. It's a different, you know, completely different sensation. It comes from a different set of values, you know, and it has the same continuity you'd expect from any brands. You know, it stitches together as a story. It makes sense in your mind. You can trust it because you understand what the levers are that are being pulled behind the scenes and why they're pulling it. But it's not like another car company. It's completely different. And I think part of the genius, part of the reason why they're the most valuable auto company, despite making far less than the next, you know, the number two, is because they're building a brand and a product by integrating the story and the emotion and the design and the technology in a much more compelling way. And they're not just afterthoughts, you know, while all the other automakers that are fighting them are still, you know, the engineers and the sort of product team are doing the product, and then they're kind of throwing it over the fence to the marketing people to try and fix it, you know.
Yeah, I think Tesla's doing, I mean, I don't know why people are always complaining how they're not selling a lot. I mean, I don't know if you know, Dacia is a Romanian car brand. And they came to the market, like, I think they were selling, like, nobody was buying those cars. And they made like an SUV for like, in pounds, like 10,000 pounds. And suddenly they are selling 500,000. I mean, it's not really so hard to go in 1 or 2 years from like small numbers to I mean, they're selling the quarter of BMW.
Yeah, well, that's it. I mean, Dacia's also bringing out, I've just been moaning about it. They're bringing out what looks like an amazing little electric car, and there's nothing in that kind of low cost level for EVs. And I think it's a massive pent up demand in the market for something, but they're not bringing it to the UK, unfortunately. This really nice. They've got a great. Dutch's a great. I think it's a fantastic brand. It's really
I like the stuff they do. I mean, people they're always talking about Elon Musk. I mean, who cares? I'm just looking at the. I got a Mercedes C-Class. I mean, in my life, I think I should never spend more than that on a car.
Yeah.
I really don't see the purpose of spending. That's about, I think, 35,000 pounds.
Yeah.
Because, okay, I'm lucky. I'm a small person, so I can drive a C-Class. People who are 180, 190, which is an average person here. I'm a midget in this country, so they will have to get a bigger car. But luckily for me, I can buy a smaller car, like a C-Class, because we have kids as well. We can all fit. We're all small. And beyond that, I don't know why would anybody spend. So I'm just waiting for all these electric cars to come into that.
Well, the Dutch they've got a fantastic one. It looks fantastic. I think it'd be like 100, probably 130k range or something like that, which is fine for like running around. You can't do long trips in it, but I mean, I think it'd be fantastic.
Yeah.
Look out for that. Look out for the Dacia.
So what are you going to do in the next 5-10 years? How do you see? Are you going to make a new company, a new product, new agency, a school, or just write books and blog and do interviews with people like me?
No, I want to do something. I don't know if I can do. I don't want to do one thing really, unless it's absolutely perfect.
You've been always doing like 10 things at a time.
Yeah. So I think the journey I've been on has been like, do I want to do one thing or 10 things? And that's not much. I don't want to do 2 things or 3 things, because that's what I've been doing, and that's too difficult actually to kind of keep, because you're sort of you're not committing enough, but you're also committing too much at the same time on all fronts. But actually, so I think for me, just trying to find that like what's the best way, and also, agency business is good for cash. It's terrible for building equity. It's terrible for sort of building anything, because you're always starting again. You do something awesome, and then you just have to you're already freaking out trying to find the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And even if you transform, even if your work has a transformative effect on your clients, it doesn't really help you. You can't put your rates up the next job. You're on the same rates. You still have to compete. You still have to pitch. So it's a bullshit business, really, at a kind of indie scale, which is where it's most interesting for me. So yeah, I'm not interested in just throwing up another agency. I think probably I think you just have to start at kind of where can you make a difference? Where can you add value? What's the sum total of all your sort of skills and insights, and the benefits of your experience, and where's that going to be most valuable, and and then how do you kind of how do you do it? Who do you need to get involved to release the value? And how can you get as many of the obstacles out of the way as possible? So I haven't quite figured that one out yet, but I can't, there's not a job with my name on it because nobody's looking for me. But at the same time, there's loads of potential sitting all over the place that I could release for people. But it's like the vehicles to do that, it's a bit unknown. So I think what I'll end up doing is probably, it's already really what I'm doing is doing a few consulting gigs with collaborators who see my benefit and call me in when they sort of see a hole that's got my shape, and I take some cash out of that, and then that gives me my food and keep, and then have a bunch of other kind of projects of various stages that if they happen, they're not going to be like my business. I won't be in that business day to day, but it will be like hopefully get them to a point where can bring a team together and set something up and start it, and maybe be involved in the beginning, but then not necessarily have to hang around if it doesn't need my participation in it going forward. But because that's it, I think the thing that I'm most excited about, I think I'm probably best at, is just conceiving, seeing sort of trends and needs in the marketplace that other people don't see, and responding to those and giving them shape, and conceptually kind of building a puzzle, putting the puzzle together, and then also having run quite a few organizations now, kind of understanding organizationally what those, what the organization needs to do, how that needs to be built in order to enable it, and then maybe stay involved or not. But yeah, I don't know, it's a bit of a tricky one, because if you're an entrepreneur, you're supposed to kind of be in it for 20 years and you know, not see your family and stuff. But that's not. I quite like to see my family.
Yeah.
But also, yeah, I'm not, you know, I'm not great operationally day in, day out for years and years. I'm much better up front and probably, you know, to be sitting back as an advisor to get offer perspectives, but without being knee deep in it, losing that perspective, you know.
Cool. Well, I was thinking to ask you more questions, but I think this is a nice place to wrap it up. But just, do you have any questions for me?
Yeah, what was, when you talked about all the different wars, when you came out of the big one, were there parallels? Because I think I had a call with a guy at the beginning of the pandemic who's kind of 10 years younger than me. I think he's about 10 years younger than me. He's super bright, and I really like him. And he was like, I'm panicking, my friends are panicking. We've never seen anything like this. We've never seen you know, what happens in this sort of situation, and what happened, not only what happens now, but what happens afterwards. So you know, so he was really stressed about it. And I sort of, the closest thing I told him I'd experienced was when the dot-com bubble burst in the 2000, and you know, how that agency, Oven, that you mentioned, I was a part of, you know, I'd hired 75 people and then had to sack everyone, including myself, within 18 months. You know, and we'd done some pretty significant projects in that time. So I was like a crazy rate of you know, of growth. But what happened at the end of that bubble was that 90% of our, you know, people who worked in their sort of digital profession, they all left. They all went and did other things. So and actually, you know, obviously it was kind of difficulty. There was a lot of difficulty for a lot of people, but it, you know, it wasn't. We found a kind of way through it, and it sort of felt a bit like that's the closest thing I'd experienced to it. So I mean, I'd ask the same question to you of, you know, on a sort of national level, when you've had a really destructive, you know, war that economically blows a fucking hole in your you know, in the whole sort of nation's apparatus. You know, what happens at the, you know, when you pick yourself up and when you're on the other side of it?
Well, I'm thinking how to answer, because usually when people ask questions like that, they have an expectation of an answer, and expecting the question and expectation of an answer have nothing to do with reality. Yeah, I don't know how else to explain that. Like, ask, because it's such a weird experience, you know. Yeah. Because for us was not like there was no big war. The more effect, the biggest experience was the economic sanctions. Yeah. Which are much worse, much more damaging. So having like 2008 for like 10 years. Being isolated economically, like war is like a couple of months pinnacle. It's far away. I was not recruited. I was avoiding recruitment. My family was against military. I'm against military. So I was avoiding that as much as I could, and luckily I didn't kill or was killed, you know. So that was far away. That's like in the woods, you know. And a little bit bombing for 3 months, of course, but I was in Belgrade where it was kind of cool. The biggest damage was what happened first. You had economic crisis, which is kind of where we are now. And the first year, everybody was fine and dreaming because everybody had savings. And then the next 2 years, which I think 21 and 22 are gonna be, are just like you really, that everything is erased, you know. So that's like the first year is always nice and dreamy. People can dream still how they're gonna go back to something. But the second and the third year, which is gonna happen to coronavirus, are going to be devastating. And of course, whoever survives those 3 years is going to be in a very good position after. People made a lot of money. My father made a lot of money. He didn't do anything bad. It's just that he, by virtue of accident and a position before, he was an entrepreneur, so he made a lot of money. So keep in mind that Yugoslavia, Serbia had a world record inflation. So that I don't know how much, a couple of 100% a day. So we're talking about 100,000 more than, you can check it out on Wikipedia. I forgot exactly, like 113,000 a year. So literally, the money you had in the morning, by afternoon, had half the value. By night, 1/3 value. So we were using, so that's kind of Zimbabwe. I met people from Zimbabwe that would go around with buckets of cash. So that's how, that's more the economic impact, like being isolated and then not doing the business. And the main change in my mind happened when I was with my dad, and you know, and we were talking, like we heard that's going to be bombing, and I was with him in my living room. I was living on my own at that moment, I had my own place. And I was telling him, like, there is no way anybody's going to bomb anybody in Europe in 99. It's like we're a civil society. Like, that's our thinking, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that day, the first bomb fell.
Yeah, okay.
And then you realize anything can happen. Like, literally anything can happen. But keep in mind, there is a really good thing about coronavirus is that people are collaborating because everybody is into it. There is a little bit of bickering, but like China, whatever. But essentially, people seem to be collaborating while war is it's total opposite. I mean, I'll just give you a crazy story. Like, I know people. You know, a lot of people have that instinct to help. I mean, majority of people want to help, disregarding of religion, nation. So they were helping anybody, children, women. What happened after the war? They were found and assassinated. So that's the crazy stuff. That's war. Because a lot of people from Italy asked me about the war, how it was, because they were experiencing a lot of casualties in March, April, May. And I work with Italians, and they asked me, how was it during the war? Because we are seeing that people all the time. They lost family. And I said that the worst thing, that still coronavirus is better, because in war you have this hate. I mean, it's human. It's not related. It's a big error to say it's related to a specific nation. I've seen it everywhere. With Marines in States, you know, there is this thing where you're really going to come back 2 years later. And I met a lot of people like that, and they're going to find you and pay back. You know, there's this hate that never goes away. I mean, these are obviously a little bit strange people, but in coronavirus, the good thing is that there is it should not be compared to war. I don't like when they use the word war, because this is humans getting together and trying to innovate with technology and science to beat something. Well, war is really, people get really, they start to be strange. I can tell you that at the last days of bombing, you know, because you get so much, I mean, I was playing video games and having fun, but at some point you start thinking, even I, who is like anti everything, I was thinking, like, can they please finally come to the city so I can fucking shoot them? like you get so bored of that. Can we get in that mentality, which is the purpose of the bombing? It's the purpose is to get angry, and it really works. You get so crazy that you get into this mentality, you become like a RoboCop, you know. And I was like, I was thinking that for a minute. Like, I was like, okay, you know, like, I have to go back to the computer and play some video games. And I was blogging, and I was making Kubrick.org, and I was like, okay, that's crazy to think that I want to go in combat, you know. And luckily I can control it. So sorry to give a long story and a bit of a rant.
No, I think it's interesting. It's interesting, and it's useful to
it's very different.
Separate.
Economic crisis is going to be very bad, I think, for the next few years, and people need to be prepared. Just like the first bomb was for me. Like, after that, I really, in my life, I'm expecting that if there is a nuclear war, I will not be surprised. There is something happening in my mind. That 2008, my father lost everything. He went from a very rich person to like an average person. And so that was not a shock for me. Not a shock. I was in .com as well. I was in. I remember mass firings. I was lucky to find a job in Benetton, which was stable. You know, it was outside digital. But that was like, I had no reaction. You know, for me that was like, not that it's not damaging, but just like, humans can do all kinds of crazy stuff can happen next year. And I think everybody should be kind of, but the way they should prepare for that is they should not relax. Like, that's why I'm asking you what you're going to do, because I feel like we need to kind of make things. And if 100 million people are making things, 3 are going to make something that's going to, you know, make it better. You know, because if you're just sitting, it's going to be getting worse and worse and worse.
No, totally. Yes, absolutely.
So sorry, you gave me a chance to blah blah a little bit. So
no, it's good. It's exactly. I mean, that's why I wanted to know. I mean, I think it's, you know, unraveling that stuff and having seen it is useful as insight. And I mean, the war side is obviously very different to the coronavirus, but the economic challenge is going to.
I don't know much about war. I know about sanctions and political isolation, dictatorship, because I was more. So I never. For me, war is something that happens. I have the same stereotype as you maybe, like something that happens in like a desert or Africa or something. I haven't seen it. I only see the bombing, which for me was like a political, economic thing. You know? Economy was devastated, you know, because I grew up in a rich country. Then 90s we became poor. Then we are now kind of in the last 5 years, 10 years is getting like, again, normal,
Yeah.
but still very far from where I grew up, because I grew up as a, like a really, well-organized place, so.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. So thank you very much. So
Yeah, thank you.
And talk later. Yeah, looking
That's
forward
fine.
to see what you're gonna do. I'm sure you're gonna figure out something.
Yeah, me too, man. Me too. I
Next
hope it's fun.
Ciao. Bye.
Right, ciao. Cheers.